Hi everybody, Joey here again and welcome back. So in today's video we're going to be revisiting the old project I did in the past titled How to Never Do Water Changes. In today's video we're going to talk about what it is, how it works, some changes and updates we did, as well as addressing some concerns you guys had in the past. Plus we're going to talk about some pros and cons to running a system like this. In that video we talked about never doing water changes again. However, we still did the water changes, we just didn't physically do them. We did them with a drip system, and we used the drip system to either eliminate or extremely space out our water changes. In that video, we used a drip irrigation system that would typically cost you about $20 to deliver our water to our aquariums. I wanted to replace that entire method because it's not necessarily easy to find a complete drip irrigation system for a couple of reasons. Sometimes they're simply not in season. At other times, they're really expensive. $20 tends to be the average, but they can be a lot more. So I decided I would try to lower the cost for you as well as simplify the build. It turns out irrigation companies are extremely common. You just have to get on Google and search for water irrigation systems. I found several, and once I discovered the individual parts that I needed, I was then able to find them and source them on eBay and Amazon for really cheap. Now all the parts that I'm about to list, I'm going to leave the product numbers in the description below, as well as their detailed information so you can easily find everything that you need. The first thing you're going to need, and arguably the most important, is a pressure regulator. Now what this does is it attaches to your water source, sort of like a garden hose would do. Then you can turn on your water, and what this does is make sure that the amount of water coming out is always the same amount. It's never less and it's never more. The benefit of having this is that it's not going to put out too much pressure and blow off your drip emitter and just gush water all over the place. So this is extremely important. Now previously we used to have a rubber pipe on the end and then we would try to drill into the side and run some hose off of it, but I thought that was really cumbersome. So I came across a threaded swivel. Now this is a 3/4 inch female adapter that will go right on your pressure regulator. And on the end of it is a 1/4 inch barb, which is made for 1/4 inch airline hose, which is exactly what we're going to add on next. Airline hose is really cheap though. Costs about 10 cents a foot if you're buying it in bulk. The hose will attach directly onto the end of the barb. The next thing you're going to need is your actual drip emitter. Now this thing is going to allow you to regulate how much water you're actually dripping. And whether you want to open it wide open or close it a little bit is both fine because your pressure regulator is going to allow you to do that. Meaning that if you do need to close it quite a bit, it's not going to allow the pressure to build up enough to blow this off. Now you can get drip emitters that have a set gallon per hour, like 1/2 gallon an hour, 1 gallon an hour, 2 gallons an hour. Personally though, I prefer the circular type. This allows me to go from 1 to 10 gallons per hour. Each click is a gallon, so it's really easy to use. Now the cost for all this is a big perk. It was $5.50 for the pressure regulator, $1.10 for the threaded swivel adapter, 55 cents for the drip emitter, and $2 for 20 feet of airline hose. So we're at about $9.15, less than half the price of purchasing a full kit, plus it's much more simpler and user-friendly. All we have to do is attach this to our water source, attach the adapter, then the hose, and then the drip emitter. Before we get to how it works though, I want to talk about some concerns. Now there was two main concerns. The first was heating your aquarium. Some people had the concern that adding a slow drip of cold water was going to overall impact the temperature of your aquarium, causing your heaters to turn on more. I, on the other hand, had mentioned that because I'm not using hot water to heat up my water during water changes, I'm actually saving money. I came to that conclusion based on my 8 years of experience with a drip system. Perhaps the heaters are turning on a little bit more, but the power that it took to heat my water up and do my water change far exceeded the heaters. So in the long run, I was saving money. But if that's still not the case with you, what I suggest doing is simply putting a container above your aquarium with a small do-it-yourself bulkhead in the side, and simply allow the fresh water to pour into the bucket, come to room temperature, and then overflow as room temperature into the tank. At least it wouldn't be as cold. However, I simply don't think that's needed. A couple of other concerns is that when you're doing your water changes, you have to siphon and or clean your gravel. And if you have a drip system, you wouldn't be doing that. But that's not really the point of a drip system. However, I decided I should probably address that anyways. You can all but eliminate needing to siphon your gravel and or sand by simply having sufficient circulation within your aquarium. If not, I have a video on how to do a do-it-yourself gravel vacuum with something as simple as an air pump. Having to do that a few minutes a week is definitely a lot better than having to do full water changes. The second concern was treating the water before it gets to your aquarium. Now I have to admit that I'm on a well, so I have two benefits. I don't have to treat my water during water changes, and water is technically free for me, meaning I don't have a water bill. So I can change as much water or drip as much water as I want month to month. But many of you need to treat your water before it gets to your aquarium. So previously, I would just put my emitter in the tank with the water dripping out of it. However, like I said, some of you guys are on municipal water, meaning that your water is probably going to have chlorine or chloramines in it. Some of you also have to deal with phosphates and even nitrates. So you guys will remember the project on how to do crystal clear water changes. It was basically the idea of treating the water before it hits your aquarium by using a PVC pipe and a suction cup and putting holes in a cap, filling it with carbon, ammonia remover, or whatever else you'd like, and then running your water through that prior to it getting to the aquarium. Well, this project was actually inspired by the idea that we needed to treat our water prior to getting to the tanks for the drip system. Now, one of the cheapest ways to remove chlorine from water is with activated carbon. Activated carbon, though, comes in two forms. It's either loose and or it's already pre-packaged in little mesh bags. So I wanted to come up with two projects that will help accommodate each ways that the carbon comes in. We're going to use water bottles to do this. Now the first one will be addressing pre-packaged carbon that's already in mesh bags. You want to take a water bottle and cut the top off of it. Then drill a hole big enough for a suction cup. Then you'll want to take a suction cup, the type that has the nub on it. These are very common in heater holders. You probably have a few extra suction cups like this laying around. You want to drill a hole into the side of the bottle just big enough for that nub to fit in. You'll then want to drill some holes in the bottom of the container. How big and how many doesn't really matter. However, I would suggest going with at least 5 that are 1/4 inch in diameter. Now we have a container that can hold your pre-packaged carbon. The last thing you'll want to do is drill a hole the size of airline hose right above the suction cup hole. Now all you have to do is suction cup this to inside of your aquarium, run your airline hose through the top hole that we created, and then of course add your drip emitter onto the end. And that's it. The suction cup will hold everything in place. The drip emitter will ensure that the airline can't come loose, as well as control the flow of the water going to it. The water exiting the drip emitter is treated by the activated carbon prior to hitting the tank, and since it's going at such a slow rate, it'll also remove chloramines. Loose carbon tends to be a lot cheaper because you can buy it in bulk. So to treat your water using loose carbon, we'll also get a water bottle. Except this time we'll drill a hole in the top cap the size of the airline hose. We'll drill a hole in the side of the bottle the size of a suction cup again. And then at the bottom, we want to use a tack and poke in as many holes as we can. These holes will be too small for the carbon to fall out of, yet there will be enough small holes for the water to freely flow through. For this type, we remove the cap, put the airline hose through it, attach our drip emitter, put the cap back on, and then suction cup everything to the side of the tank. Now again, the same thing's going to happen. All of that fresh water is going to drip down through that carbon and be treated before it hits the tank. The carbon that we use is going to last us a ridiculous amount of time simply because we're only dripping water through it. So if I was only dripping 1 gallon an hour, this amount of carbon would last me about 4 months. So in order for this to work, we need to have a way to remove all of that extra water. And you can do so with drilling your aquariums and or sumps and adding in a drain that leads to a floor, or you could use a PVC overflow and overflow all of that extra water and have that water overflow to a drain somewhere. But another option is to add a float switch to your aquarium that turns on when your water level rises, activates a pump, and that pump will pump all of that extra water out of your tank. Whether it pumps it down to a drain or a larger container that you can deal with once a week, whatever the case may be, that is just another idea. But luckily I have videos on how to build sumps, how to drill aquariums, and how to make a float switch. Okay, so now let's move on to how much water you should be dripping to your aquariums. Then let's talk about the pros and cons. So the amount of water you should be dripping to your tank simply depends on your tank's inhabitants. My suggestion is to simply experiment with it and do testing over a few weeks. See which flow rate is right for you. You don't want to drip too much and waste water, but you don't want to drip too little and not be diluting the water enough to have optimal water quality. So obviously a drip system is not necessarily for everybody. You need a specific set of circumstances to run a drip system. You need a continuous water source as well as a drain somewhere. And not everybody has those. But that doesn't mean these aren't great systems. In fact, I swear by them. I've been using drip systems for the past 8 years and I'm not going to stop anytime soon. Now besides that, there are some other pros and cons. Some of the cons are the fact that you do need a drain and a consistent water source. Whether or not it saves you money or not is something that people will argue all the time. The main thing is that they save you time. On tanks that are running drip systems, I don't do regular water changes. Usually I'll do a water change once a month or every 2 months, sometimes every 3 months. It really depends on how much water I'm dripping and the stocking of the tank. Even if you didn't do a water change for a few months, you would have to top off the water due to evaporation. But a drip system also takes care of that, so you don't have to do any top off. These are also only good for a freshwater aquarium. These also bring extreme stability and consistency to your aquariums. In fact, when it comes to water changes versus a drip systems, in my opinion, bring far more consistency. Let me explain what I mean. So we have drip systems and we have water changes. Now, over time, our aquariums get dirty. Nitrates build up, dissolved organics, everything that we want to remove. Now, as these build up, we test for them, and since when they get to a certain spot, we like to dilute them with a water change. A few days later, though, they start to rise again. So we do another water change. Then they start to rise again. Eventually, we need to do really big water changes. As you can see though, there's not a whole lot of consistency. This is a great example as to why I like to do 30% water changes every 3 days, so I don't get these peaks nearly as high. When it comes to a drip system, it takes a lot longer for things to get bad in your aquarium simply because we're continuously adding water to the system. But that doesn't mean they're going to not climb anymore. It just means they're going to climb extremely slowly. Eventually, we will have to do a water change, but that might be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months away. And when that happens, we're only right here where we would be at 1 week apart with regular water changes. Then that would dip down and then slowly rise again. As you can see, the drip system offers far more consistency. So a drip system can eliminate water changes depending on the system. If not, it could potentially prolong your water changes and the space in between them by a drastic amount. What I am personally after, though, is the consistency that it offers. I can assure you that any aquarium that I've ever run with a drip system, I have never had any issues with it and or ever worried about it. Anyways guys, I do plan on revisiting some old projects from the past, but I hope I don't need to do them too often. If you guys have a suggestion or one that you would like me to revisit anytime soon, let me know in the comments section below. Anyways, hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. I also wanted to thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next Sunday for a new do-it-yourself project.